Hello everyone, it is Aubrey again. And I know that I said I was going to make 2 more videos about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome yesterday, and I didn't do that. And now I'm having a shutdown date today. I'm doing a little bit better than I was. I'm out of bed now, and I ate. It is 4:44 p.m. on a Friday, and I just barely took my medicine and ate for the first time today and got out of bed. And the reason for that is because I'm having an autistic burnout. And I know I always talk about wanting to make more videos about Aspergers, and I haven't. And I feel like I'm kind of a bit hypocritical when it comes to that, because I always talk about how people should talk about autism and Asperger's as if it's not something that's extremely weird, but at the same time I'm afraid to talk about it, because I know that if I talk about it and I let people know that I'm autistic, their view of me is automatically going to change. So if they knew me as a likable girl before, very intelligent, sweet, fun to hang out with, funny, kind of quirky, I think that's the only thing people really notice about me, is that I'm quite quirky. But they don't think autistic, they think quirky. But as soon as I bring the word autistic into it, their viewpoint of me changes. It's usually on a subconscious level, but it's very strange because I didn't suddenly become autistic once I told you I was autistic. I was autistic from the day I was born. I was autistic the day I met you. If we are friends, or if you've known me for however long, for that whole time that you've known me, I've been autistic. The only difference is now you know. But I'm afraid to talk about it because of that. There's such a stigma surrounding autism and Asperger's. I think what's funny about Asperger's is because it is on the autism spectrum, but it's so different from what people think of when they think of an autistic person. But what is also strange about that is, what does an autistic person look like? I have almost every time I tell somebody that I'm Asperger's, they bring up that I don't look autistic. Well, what does autistic look like? People don't know. What does an Asperger's person look like? People don't know. And if an image does come to mind, it might be Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, or it could be a child, because most people don't realize that there are autistic adults. Autism is not a childhood thing, because autistic children become autistic adults. And if you were autistic when you were a kid, you will continue to be autistic. And there are autistic adults. The only reason why people don't think about that very often is because people don't like to think about the fact that there are autistic adults out there. What's interesting about me is I went almost my whole life not knowing that I was autistic. And I think that's mostly because I'm a girl. And it is it's difficult to get an Asperger's diagnosis anyway, but if you are a girl, it is extremely difficult. Because the criteria and the knowledge that people do have about Asperger's and surrounding Asperger's, even in the medical community, it's based off of boys. It's based off of, this is what an Asperger's person looks like, and it's always a boy. And I'm not an autistic boy. I'm an autistic girl. I always have been, and I always will be. And just because you're finding out that I'm autistic for the first time doesn't mean that I'm any different from the person you knew before. The only difference is now I'm just choosing to tell you. Because I don't feel like I should have to be afraid to tell people that. But I do. It's kind of frightening, because people could see me as having a certain amount of capability, and as soon as you bring the word autistic into it, people's expectations of you immediately drop to significantly lower levels, when they could have had skyrocket expectations for you before. You were the same person, but now there's a word in there, autistic. And it has such a negative sound to it for a lot of people. It doesn't to me. For me, I like the word autistic because it describes me. It gives me a reason for being different. And I think another thing people don't realize is Asperger's is not just about having social difficulties. That is one of the main components of it. And also something I want to mention about that is it's usually less obvious when a girl has it because we mask better, typically, not always. Every autistic person is different. I'm one autistic person. And just as every neurotypical person is different, every autistic person is different also. Neurotypical means without autism. So if you are not autistic, you are a neurotypical. Every neurotypical person is different, and every autistic person is different. It's the same. And I think people don't realize that it's not only about social difficulties, because it is a neurological condition and it is based off of the way that my brain works. What autism is having a difference in the way you think. And that's what makes it difficult, is because I'm living in a world every day that was not made for me. This world that we have was designed for neurotypicals. It was not, they did not have people like me in mind when they designed this world. If they designed a world for people with Asperger's, the world we live in designed with an Asperger's person in mind. Neurotypical people would be the ones that have a problem functioning. Because the problem is not that we are incompetent. I'm completely capable. It just takes me a lot more energy to do the same things because this world was not made for me. I think that is why a lot of people with Asperger's feel like they're an alien. Because at times that's what it feels like. It's not an enjoyable feeling. I wish that I didn't have to feel that way, but I do. And a lot of that also has to go back to that social stigma relating autism. Because you bring the word autistic in it, and I become an alien. But you take the word autistic out, and I'm weird, and I'm a jerk, and I'm problematic. That's what I am without the word autism. Bring the word autism in, and I'm an alien. I can't win either way. But I'm realizing that's not my problem to fix. I don't have to be responsible for the way that people respond to autistic people. That is their decision of if people want to change their viewpoint of what autistic is. And I think a lot of it will come with representation, because we do not have any representation almost for autistic people. And it's extremely difficult being an autistic person. I keep starting this sentence and then my brain spirals into 10 different branches, so I'm going to try to make sure I finish this thought. Asperger's is not just a social deficit. That's not all it is. When you're Asperger's, you also, it's like you have, Asperger's is like a basket you get. And when, if a neurotypical person has a toolbox that has tools in it, that just comes naturally to them, and those things help them deal with things in everyday life, and it helps them relate to people, And if a problem comes up, they can just easily open up their toolbox and fix it. And the thing is, they don't even think about that because it's in here and they never had to put any effort into creating those tools. It was just handed to them. With me, I was handed a basket, and that basket consists of social anxiety, OCD, panic attacks, meltdowns, confusion, isolation, feeling incapable, even though I'm completely capable. I'm a very intelligent person. Intelligence does not equal an easy life, which is one of the hardest parts, I think, for me to accept about myself, is I am a very intelligent person, but in many ways I have such difficulty with things that neurotypical people don't have problems with. And that doesn't sit well with me. Because, while my neurotypical friends are growing up and learning to do things on their own, I'm not. And a big part of that has to do with that toolbox. My neurotypical friends were given a toolbox that I was not. I was given a basket full of stuff I don't want. So, my defense against the world are those things in that basket that are difficult. But at the same time, autism is not a bad thing. We need autistic people, and I think that's another thing I want people to understand, is there's so many inventions, especially related to technology, things that we would not have if it were not for autistic people. Albert Einstein was autistic. They thought he was mentally incompetent. Albert Einstein. The word that they used at the time was retarded. I tried to avoid using that word because at the time that they used that was a normal word. It was not offensive back then. It is now. The only reason I'm using it now is because that's the exact word that they used to describe Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was autistic, just like me. I can be completely capable. I just need to find a way to create my own toolbox. And a part of the problem with that is there's no help. There's no help for autistic adults. It's only for kids. And if you weren't diagnosed as a kid, you're kind of screwed in a lot of cases. And that might not be true, but that's been my experience. I've brought it up to several doctors saying, hey, I think I'm autistic. And some of them laughed and said, no, I don't think you're Asperger's. Well, they're rubbing my shoulder, and I'm freaking out because I don't like to be touched that way. There's other ways that I like to be touched, but I don't know. Hugs are okay. I love hugs, actually. I really, really love hugs. Hugs are like one of the best things in the universe, in my opinion. But it's different because when you hug someone, they let go of you and they don't keep touching you. And it's also, I have problems with light touches. So hugs are more of a firm, pressure touch, which is actually calming for me. Pressure in that way is calming for me. It calms down my nervous system because I have sensory processing disorder. So hugs actually help with that. And they're just really nice anyway, because it's like really cute if you think about it. It's like, hey, human, I like you, so I'm going to wrap my arms around you and pull you close because you're cool, is basically what a hug is saying. But with light touches and stuff, my nervous system does not work well with it. And it was interesting to find out that I actually have a genetic marker for autism. There's not like exactly a genetic marker for autism, but there are genes that have links to certain things. And my neurologist did genetic testing on me when I first saw him to, just because he's the one that's treating my dysautonomia and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and the one who's doing my mast cell activation syndrome testing. And he was just doing genetic testing, and we found a marker, and there's links with that genetic marker to autism. And he told me that, like, sometimes the genes tell us more than the actual thing. And I knew before that I was autistic. The only thing is nobody wanted to acknowledge it. And something I've realized, and it's kind of really painful to realize this, is treatment for autism is based off of other people's comfort. It's never really based off of the autistic person's comfort. Since I am so high functioning, I don't usually make people too uncomfortable. I'm sure I do sometimes, just because social things don't always come naturally to me. So I don't know. I don't think I make people that uncomfortable, but since I don't make people uncomfortable, that's the same reason why I can't get treatment. If I was more severely autistic and it affected the people's lives around me in negative ways, I would get treated right away. And if I was somewhere in the middle, I might be able to get help, but not as quickly. So, and when I say affect people's life in a negative way, I'm not saying that as if autistic people bring negative things into people's lives, because I highly disagree. I think people don't put enough emphasis on the positives about autistic people. But having a severe autistic child is not easy. And that's something that people with autistic kids know. It's not easy. And so it's great that those kids can get help. That's amazing for them. The problem is I want help too, because yes, I'm not affecting your life negatively, but it's affecting my life negatively. And that should be enough to have services in place for people like me. The fact that I'm suffering, why do I have to make other people's lives harder in order to get help for myself? And this is definitely exasperated, I think, because I'm a girl, and it's usually less obvious in girls. I'm having a shutdown day, and what that is sometimes things just get too much for an autistic person, and it's like our brains turn off because they can't take anymore. And something that I've definitely noticed, and I know this is the same for a lot of other autistic people, is the more stressed out I am, and the more tired I am, and sometimes the more sick I am, the more obvious my autistic qualities show through. Because I do try my best to mask them in order to blend in as well as I can. But when I get more stressed out, it starts coming out more. And for me, personally, that especially comes out through the form of executive dysfunction, which is something that I struggle with every day, but I would say the more burned out I'm getting, the more I struggle with executive function. And that's why I was not able to get out of bed, and I wasn't able to get myself food or medicine until 4:44 p.m. because of that executive dysfunction. And there's a girl on YouTube who is autistic, and she makes videos, Ask an Autistic. And she has a really good video on executive dysfunction. I don't think I'm going to try to explain it, just because I don't believe I'm going to be good at explaining that. And there's John. Hello?
Hello.
Come here. Come here! Did you brush your teeth?
Yeah.
Okay. I asked him that because of the gluten, not because I mean.
My keys hurt my butt.
Oh my god. I'm making a video on autism.
Oh.
You have anything to say?
Patience is key.
I agree.
Being patient and understanding.
I think, like, basically the same things that are important in any relationship are the same with a person with autism. It just becomes even more important.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, things like trust and, like, feeling safe and respect and boundaries. All of those things are important in a relationship between two neurotypical people, but when one of the people is autistic, those things become even more important.
Oh, and another one, communication.
Which is hilarious because it's sometimes impossible for me to, like, communicate effectively, but that's where I think that's the reason why patience is the most important, is because of that communication.
Mm-hmm.
I could describe it as like a communication gap. So, like, there's like a gap between us because he's a neurotypical and I'm an autistic person, and so we don't think the same, which is actually why we're good for each other, because I feel like we balance each other out really well.
Mm-hmm.
He's terrible at planning things, and that's what I do for a hobby. And I'm not good at being in the moment, and my anxiety levels are, like, really high all the time, but he's good at just going with the flow. And so I, like, bring him down and, like, ground him, and he keeps me from digging myself into the ground is what.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's why patience is so important, is because of that communication gap. Because communication and patience helps build a bridge. And when you have that bridge is when you have safety and respect and all that other stuff that I feel like a lot of couples don't have.
Mm-mm.
I know. Okay. I'm gonna go now. What? What?
Nothing.
By the way, I ate Cheerios.
Okay.
Okay, bye.